Hi, I'm Cameron Carpenter, and I'm seated at the Marshall and Ogletree organ at Middle Collegiate Church in New York City. This organ was built in 2008 and was a kind of collaboration between the organ builders, Marshall and Ogletree, and me as the designer, shortly before I spent about a year as artist in residence at this church. And it's my great pleasure to come back and go through this organ to try to explain some of the concepts and some of the incredible experimental sounds and really beautiful and unusual, interesting things that to me make this organ the most colorful organ in New York City, and by a long shot the most musically diverse, particularly because this organ was conceived to address the numerous musical styles that take place at Middle Collegiate Church, ranging from the high classical to gospel. So in this case, the organ incorporates not only the romantic organ, special tunings and temperaments more suited to the classical organ and historical performance, but also the cinema organ, even sounds evocative of the Hammond, extensive percussions, and then many experimental stops such as Reed Celestes, unique mutations, and sub-bass stops, which are achieved by the use of thick-pin rotary woofers, the first ever permanent application anywhere in the world of this revolutionary technology to the organ. The organ is controlled from a luxuriously appointed drop-sill console built by Southfield organ builders in Springfield, Massachusetts, under the supervision of organ builder David Melrose. And its general concept and design, particularly its massive case, was inspired by the organ formerly in the auditorium at the New York John Wanamaker store, which was located at Astor Place just a few blocks away. It was an organ on which many great artists, including Virgil Fox, Fernando Germani, and many others, gave their New York City debuts. And in that spirit, I wanted to recreate an organ that might someday be similarly welcoming to legions of new talents here in Lower Manhattan, in a neighborhood like the East Village, in which so much artistic expression has happened in the last 100 years. The organ has 5 divisions: pedal, orchestral, great, swell, and solo, all separately enclosed. There are 3 chambers in the church. To the left of the altar is the main chamber, which contains the great, solo, and some of the pedal. To the right of the altar is contained the swell and the orchestral, and the remainder of the pedal. The rear of the church faces 2nd Avenue, and to the left of the main window is located the 3rd chamber, which houses the thick-pin rotary woofers used in the pedal division. Each of the manual divisions of the organ also has a kind of embedded echo organ of its own, all of which speak from this location. The organ uses colored tabs. This is similar to a theater organ. In this instrument, flutes and diapasons use white tabs, strings and string celestes use yellow, and reeds use red. But intermanual couplers are also, similar to in a theater organ, black. Intramanual couplers are gray. Alternate stops are blue, and lavenders used for the tremulants. The color of the engraving also indicates what division the stop or coupler in question originates from. The orchestral division is engraved in pink, the great in gold, the solo in blue, the swell in green, and the pedal in black, which means that when the rows of couplers are next to each other, the origin of the divisions can be told from the color without reading any text. There's research that suggests that the human mind takes longer to read actual text than large characters, numbers, and colors. And this is something that I thought about in putting together the stop scheme, wherein one only has to look at the number and the color of the number on, for instance, a coupler, where there are many couplers in a row, to determine which is the right one to press, particularly in a heated moment of improvisation or playing of repertoire. Starting with the orchestral division, which is the first lowest keyboard, we'll go through the stops. The first is a diapason 8. It's the softest of the diapasons in the organ. Next, a 2-rank string. I wanted to eliminate, as far as possible, fanciful and overly descriptive names, Strings typically are named string celeste. That is a 3-rank, a flat, natural, and sharp string. Next, a doppelflute. A melodia, or a concert flute if you like. Four-foot octave. There's the 4-foot octave with the 8-foot diapason. A 4-foot flute d'amour, if you like. It just says flute on the tab. Then a 16-foot reed of sort of soft nature. Eight-foot clarinet. This is sampled from a Wurlitzer organ. There's the clarinet with the doppelflute. That clarinet has an original 16-foot bass octave, which comes on with the subcoupler. Then there's a fortissimo trumpet. Not enclosed. One of the unique things about this organ is its use of alternate stops, which have blue tabs. An alternate stop works the same way as any other of the native stops in the division, in that if it is not manipulated in any unusual way, it turns on and off with a default stop whose title is indicated in the appropriate screen. There's one screen for each of the 5 alternate stops in the organ. So in this case, the default alternate stop voice for the orchestral division is an 8-foot flute. This, of course, means that that stop and its default voice can be used set on pistons, integrated with other stops, just like any other normal native stop in the organ. But it has a special function. When the set button is depressed and then the stop is turned on, a flashing cursor appears in the appropriate window. And it is then possible to use any of the up or down functions, such as the sequencer, next or previous, the memory level up or down, or even the transposer plus or minus, to scroll through an enormous variety of selectable voices, which of course not only saves real estate in the console, but vastly expands the tonal palette of the organ. So we'll go through the alternates now, starting with that 8-foot flute. Then there are additional strings, in this case a 2-rank viola, because string celeste stops are rarely used on their own, I elected to eliminate individual tabs for string celestes, instead using the space to put more complete string celeste stops in their place and providing the opposite function, a celeste off for each division of the organ, which is indicated by a yellow light. So there it becomes possible to still receive, of course, not only the string celeste, but when desired, the string rank without its celeste, or in the case of multiply celested ranks, with just the 3-rank strings, flat, natural, and sharp, we can engage the celestes off and keep just the natural rank. In certain cases, the celestes off function also removes half of a 2-rank mixture, half of a sesquialter, or other functions, or in some way alters more complex stops, so it's a useful thing to have. Going to the alternate, the first stop that we encounter is a 2-rank viola celeste. A much broader and warmer one than found on the native stops. Of course, its celeste comes off. Then there's a very, very quiet 2-rank dulcet of extremely narrow scale. One of my favorite stops. Very high energy, but very low volume. One of several versions of the dulcet in the organ. There's a flat-tuned undamaris, very soft. There it is without the celeste. Then, of course, one of the great functions in the alternate is that it can bring together grouped alternates. So it's not necessarily true that one only has one stop at a time. In this case, the alternate strings 6 brings together all of the 6 ranks of other alternate strings within the alternate for a big sound to which we can add the 5 ranks of native strings for a pretty large string sound, and that's only in one division. There's a tibia minor, the sort of second tibia from a Wurlitzer organ. In this case, of course, without much of the unsteadiness and poor tuning often found in a theater organ, it becomes a very useful stop outside of that kind of playing. But here it is with a tremulant. Here's a quintadina celeste of 2 ranks. There's without the celeste. Pretty normal quintadina. Becomes a very interesting sound, I think, with a celeste stop added to it. And throughout the organ, I really took the opportunity to exploit the technology at work here, which gives us the ability to use and experiment with dynamic sounds, such as that and many other even more involved, unusual stops, which would be prohibitively expensive, perhaps, to maintain and tune, for instance, Reed Celestes, or which would simply take up too much room and couldn't be justified in an organ of this size. There's a 2-foot Gemshorn, which provides the 2-foot that's otherwise missing on the tabs. A 16-foot Dalzian, and a 16-foot Dalzian Celeste. A little bit reminiscent of the harmonium, perhaps. One of the really interesting things here, too, is that like the clarinet, it has a bottom octave, in this case a 32-foot octave. But we applied that 32-foot octave as well to the Celeste, so it's possible to have an incredible novelty, a really soft 32-foot Reed Celeste. A usefully ugly sound.